literature.
A long campaign is now over.
This is the car market in Mogadishu.
NATO's military success against
many Western nations.
This is On Assignment.
Hello from Washington and welcome to On Assignment. I'm Alex Villarreal.
And I'm Philip Alexio. We begin this week in Russia where a new profanity law is drawing some criticism.
In Thailand, taking care of migrants' children at work sites.
We'll update you on a man whose robotic walking suit has given him a new lease on life.
And the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge goes viral and drops in on us as well.
The bucket stops here. On Assignment is on the air. A new law in Russia threatens fines for profanity in films, literature, media, music, and theater, and the restriction, the toughest since the Soviet era, aims to protect the Russian language and has been welcomed by those who say cursing is out of control.
But many artists reject the move as censorship in line with a string of conservative morality laws in Russia. VOA Moscow correspondent Daniel Sheriff tells me about the controversy and how it has affected Russia's arts community.
Russian theater emerged from the strict propaganda of the Soviet era as a diverse forum for social discourse and creative expression. But a recently enacted law against profanity hits theaters with fines of up to $1,400 if their work includes swear words deemed inappropriate.
Daniel, whom does this law affect the most?
Well, it affects anyone who's going to be performing in a public space, such as actors who may be involved in theater, anyone who's going to be showing a film festival or involved in distribution of films in theaters where the public would be viewing them. It also affects music and books to some degree as well, but they're mainly going to be marked that they contain profanity inside of them and sealed off in tape according to the law. So when it comes to people who could actually face fines, we're talking about mainly the theater and film industries here.
And there have been concerns about this. What are the primary worries that people have?
Well, the big concern is that this, of course, could be a step towards increased or stronger censorship of any sort of public performance, whether it's film or theater, and even the written word, of course, because this does affect any kind of printed material as well. People have to be careful what they're printing now, because if it does contain swear words, perhaps even in a quote, it's not really clear because it's a fairly vague law, then they could face a fine. And is this just the beginning of something that's going to lead to even tighter controls? That's the biggest concern right now.
But it's interesting, Daniel, because you spoke to people who are in support of the law as well. So what do they say, these supporters?
We have to look at the law for what it is right now. It's targeting certain very strong swear words in the Russian language.
The law's supporters, like Moscow State University history professor Anna Kuzmina, say it will help promote a better artistic culture.
My personal opinion, and I support this law, is that profane language has almost become the norm and even acquired a certain charm. Frequently, people do not take the trouble of finding the words and speak emotionally, expressing themselves with 5 or 6 four-letter words.
In terms of censorship, how does this play into the overall scene in Russia of censorship and of suppression of dissent?
Well, we've seen a movement by the authorities here in Moscow. The Kremlin wants to take a much more conservative line towards what the media is putting out. Certainly, they've taken control of most of the media here in Russia, television stations, even newspapers. There are very few independent voices in the media. And so this is considered part of that overall conservative trend.
And as a foreign journalist yourself in Russia, do you feel any of that censorship affecting your own job?
For foreign journalists, we of course are not under the control of the Russian government by any means. So we're able to report what we want to report. That's not affecting us directly. Indirectly, of course, just being in an environment where you see a lot of your Russian colleagues and contemporaries feeling the pressure from the Kremlin, feeling like they can't report in a balanced way or else they're going to get a phone call. And some of them have actually told me directly that some from the independent media that they're under incredible pressure, that they have inspections from government authorities on a regular basis, and phone calls and emails and so forth. Very strong pressure against them to toe the Kremlin line. So that's very unfortunate, and it's sad to feel that overall environment here in Moscow when there are so many good writers and so many good journalists who are now feeling the pinch.
And again, our thanks to VOA's Daniel Sheriff. Daniel tells us Russia is taking this profanity battle to the internet next, with plans to launch swearbot software designed to root out language deemed inappropriate online.
Well, moving on now to Thailand, a country that has faced scrutiny for human trafficking and slave labor, but some of the kingdom's companies are trying to improve working conditions, especially for the millions of migrant laborers. VOA's Steve Herman talks with me about what's happening there.
Adjacent to this open-air space, several hundred workers are building 319 luxury homes. With a very low unemployment rate in Thailand, builders and contractors are dependent on migrant laborers, some of whom insist on bringing along their spouses, who are also put to work.
Steve, what kind of pressure has the international community been putting on Thailand with regard to their slave labor and the working conditions over there?
Well, I think Thailand was really stung by this State Department trafficking in persons report that came out recently. Now that the country is under a military government and there's essentially one man, army chief, a general who has all the legislative and executive power, he was very determined apparently to do something about it. And we're starting to see rhetoric and some action from the government to crack down on some of the worst abuses that Thailand has been accused of.
Do they have a certain amount of time that they can be in the country? And how's that working with regard to sort of legalizing them, if you will?
Well, the crackdown that has been undertaken by the military junta in Thailand deals with the undocumented workers. Basically, they want all these workers registered in the country, and that process has been underway. They've been able to already register perhaps several 100,000 workers in a very short period of time. So these workers are quite welcome, they're quite wanted, but the military junta now wants them to be properly registered and sponsored by some sort of employer. So to be here legally, they're supposed to be hired by a contractor who then takes them to one of these new one-stop centers to get all their paperwork done.
So where are they coming from?
Mainly they are coming from Burma and Cambodia. Now, exactly how many there are in Thailand is unknown, but a conservative estimate is about 2 million. And when they come, these workers, men and women, tend to come as a family unit.
It's very common in construction site whereby we can see lots of kids running around and not doing anything productive. Sometimes even worse. Sometimes you can use the child labor to help build houses and things like that.
Previously, the Sansari Corporation, like many builders in the developing world, looked the other way regarding children at construction sites. President Seta Taivizin says all of Sansari's contractors now sign a clause acknowledging they can be terminated if they are found to be employing anyone under the age of 15.
And we hear about crackdowns and official campaigns, but especially if you go around the country, you will still find children working. What the laws are and what is the reality sometimes in this part of the world are two very different things.
Construction worker Ma Moy from Myanmar has a bachelor's degree in history. Despite her education, she says the best way to provide for her son is for her and her husband to build homes and offices in Thailand.
At previous construction sites making daily wages, we couldn't send our son to school. So that is why I am elated he can have this kind of educational experience here.
And at this construction site, there, of course, is a UNICEF site to keep the children during the day and to put them through school. Are there a lot of UNICEF sites around Thailand, or just a few?
Well, this was a site that is actually run by a private construction company, and that company made one of the contractors build this site. This, you could say, is more of a model site. There are perhaps a handful in the country right now like this, and the hope is from UNICEF and others that this will become very common and not be a rarity.
VOA correspondent Steve Herman in Thailand reporting how things are getting a little bit better for the migrant workers over there.
Absolutely. Well, we're taking a break now, but coming up, an update on a man VOA recorded walking for the first time in more than 2 decades. You're watching On Assignment.
It's been about 6 months since we introduced you to Bob Emilio. Bob's legs are paralyzed, but a new device known as the exoskeleton has given him the ability to walk. VOA's Carolyn Pursuti was there. Carolyn joins me now for an update on Bob. And Carolyn, how are things going with this guy?
It's going great for Bob. I just spoke with him just several minutes ago. You know, when we first saw him, he was taking maybe 50, 60 steps at a time. He's up to 1,000, and he can stand for a complete hour.
So he had to get in shape, just to remind the audience. You don't just stick this device on. He had to sort of get in shape before he could wear it, right?
Absolutely, and especially his arm strength. He needed to be able to push himself up from his wheelchair to stand up. And he said, you know, when he first started, he was gripping that walker very tightly. He said now he barely touches it when he walks.
And when we last talked, Bob had mentioned that he had made a promise to his daughter, and what was that?
Right, that promise was to walk her down the aisle. Trish Emilio had never seen or never remembered her father walking because she was a little tight.
Too small.
Right, when he had his injury, his spinal cord injury, and so he did walk her down the aisle, and with a huge smile on his face.
I mean, I can only imagine. I mean, here you are, his daughter, and your dad's coming down the aisle. He's walking for the first time. I mean, what's happening at her wedding must be her makeup must be flooding down her face.
You're right. He said to me, he kept on telling her, breathe, just breathe. He said, if you inhale, you'll naturally exhale. So he kept telling her that, and everyone in the church was just
I can't imagine what that must have been like. Right. So he's walking with a different apparatus or something? What is this thing?
He now has the ability to walk with leg braces. So what that means is he doesn't have that huge apparatus around his trunk portion of his body, and the therapists are more there just to guide him. They don't really assist him as much. So just the braces, and then he has small crutches just to help him out in front of it, not the walker.
Because it's interesting that he's advancing, and of course the exo is very kind of cumbersome and bulky yet, but now the braces are less than that.
Absolutely.
And more streamlined and lighter for him.
Right, and he said he has another goal now.
And what is
because
that?
He has 3 daughters. First daughter, he wheeled her down the aisle. Second daughter, which was just a month ago, he walked her down the aisle. Third daughter, he said he wants to use those leg braces to walk her down the aisle whenever she's ready to get married. She's not quite ready yet.
Goodness. Are there more people using this device?
Absolutely. When we first brought you the story of the exoskeleton about a year ago, there were dozens in America, but not too many. Now there are 80 exoskeletons worldwide, and they're in various countries, from South Africa to Turkey to the Czech Republic, Mexico, Canada. They're really expanding into different areas, and they say as of right now, 11 million steps have been taken with people suited up in the exoskeleton, and that's 4 times as many as when we first brought you the story.
It's really incredible, especially for people who cannot walk, and the future looks bright for them down the road.
Absolutely.
All right, VOA's Carolyn Pursuti, thanks for coming on and updating us about Bob. A great story, and thanks for following it for us.
Oh, my pleasure.
All right, we're going to take a short break, but on the other side, icing down one of our own. What am I talking about? Stick around and find out. You're watching On Assignment. A social media stunt sweeping the U.S. is raising awareness and money to combat the deadly neurological disease, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. ALS is known for claiming the life of American baseball player Lou Gehrig nearly 80 years ago and is commonly referred to as Lou Gehrig's disease.
Well, now ALS is being associated with something else, the Ice Bucket Challenge. The video campaign, which has seen people across the country pour ice water on their heads, has raised millions for ALS research. I caught up with VOA's Arash Arabasadi to talk about it.
Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, it's also known as Lou Gehrig's disease. It is a neurodegenerative disease, meaning that your brain and your spinal cord stop being able to relay messages to your muscles.
My father was diagnosed with Lou Gehrig's last November. The disease immediately started ripping through his system at a very fast pace, where his body deteriorated very quickly, and on April 27th, he passed away.
A few months later, the Ice Bucket campaign took off.
3 of my friends nominated me. I just thought this would be a great time just to, advertise everything,
So he took the Ice Bucket Challenge, and in the first 4 hours after he posted, Matt's video had raised more than $2,000.
So how did dumping a bucket of ice water on yourself become associated with ALS?
Yeah, so, I think that there's some popular rumors and theories about it, but I think it was really all about just kind of wake up to shock people and alert them of this disease that you probably don't think about a lot. In a country of more than 300 million, at any given time, 30,000 people in the U.S. suffer from ALS. So it's not a huge portion of the population, but I knew somebody growing up who had ALS, and and I met someone for this story who lost his father to ALS. So I've become more aware of it myself in the past couple of weeks just because of this challenge.
There have been a lot of participants in this challenge, from your everyday average person to top-notch, most prominent celebrities. Who are some of the most notable participants?
Some of the most notable: Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, LeBron James, Jimmy Fallon, even former President George W. Bush, who extended a challenge to Bill Clinton, who hasn't taken the challenge yet, by the way.
Bill.
Yeah.
And how much money has this raised? I mean, it's been really an incredible thing, hasn't it?
It's been amazing. So as of the 26th of August, they had raised $88.5 million. And to kind of paint a picture of what their fundraising campaign was like before that happened, last year at the same time, they had raised about $2.5 million. 2.5 versus $88.5 million, all because of this viral campaign that the ALS Association didn't even start. It just started totally grassroots, a couple families, and here we are today.
Barbara Newhouse says social media have changed the way nonprofits do business.
What we've seen with the Ice Bucket Challenge is it's probably a game changer for all of us in the fundraising world.
And Nikki Usher, an assistant professor at George Washington University, agrees.
And if you want to be able to be a player in the fundraising arena and to reach people that you haven't reached before, you have to reach people who you're not immediately going to be connected to. And one of the ways you do that is through social media.
Newhouse says the challenge now is to properly distribute the millions of dollars raised so far. Probably not the worst problem a nonprofit could have.
How does the challenge actually work?
So the challenge works by you take a bucket of ice water, or someone takes a bucket of ice water and dumps it on you, but before that you challenge a few other people to do it. So this is kind of the branching out viral nature of it, because if I call out 3 people and they call out 3 people, before you know it, you've got this exponential growth. So yeah, you hit yourself with ice water and you donate money, and
Well, we have not come here just to talk about the challenge. You have been challenged, and you've come here to do the challenge right now. So tell us, who has called you out?
I was called out first by my friend Trish Martinelli. Second by my friend Dave Book, who is at the end of my story. He's the guy who has a bulldozer dumping its scoop on his head. And also by my in-laws, the Gelmans. So it's definitely time to buck up and get soaked.
And who do you challenge?
I challenge my boss, Amy Katz.
Oh boy!
I challenge Steve Reddish, and I challenge VOA director David Ensor.
That's amazing. Yeah. All right, well let's stand up and let's get ready for this. We're gonna get the challenge going. We have our intern Jaden here, who's gonna help us with this. Jaden?
Always a good time hanging out with On Assignment.
All right, that was again VOA's Arash Arabasadi. Always such a good sport for us, isn't he?
As were you, getting drenched a little bit in the process. So.
Well, thank you. All for a good cause, of course. The ALS Association says it is incredibly grateful for all of the support that's come from the Ice Bucket Challenge. As of early September, it had recorded well over $100 million in donations from the challenge.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, well, moving on now from videos to movies, where last week we told you about Nollywood, Nigeria's Hollywood. Well, this week we want to show you an African filmmaker in the U.S. who makes Nollywood-style films that focus on the lives of African immigrants.
VOA's Greg Flakes has that story for us from Houston, Texas.
Using a public park in Houston for an African setting, Kelechi Eke and his crew are making a music video to help promote his recent movie, African Time.
You know you gotta be aware of time in your life. You don't need to run, you just gotta know. The time is money.
The music video is a quick way for people to get a general idea of what the movie is about.
With humor, the film takes on the African tendency to arrive late.
African Time is obvious. They know that, you tell Africans to be somewhere at 1 o'clock, they show up at 6.
Angolan singer Angelina Katumbela suggested the video as a way to promote the film, her singing career, and African punctuality.
There are consequences whenever you are late. That's the message of the song.
And speaking of which, you're late right now, too.
Yes, I'm late. Oh my gosh. African Time, so let's go.
Eke and Katumbela work closely on the choreography and staging of this video, but he handles almost every other aspect of production.
I'm blessed to be able to do a lot of these things by myself. I write, I produce, I direct, I even act in my own movies.
Wait a minute. So you want us to tell Americans that our wedding starts at 2 p.m. and tell Africans that it starts at 10 a.m.?
Exactly.
No, that's a 4-hour time difference.
That's the only way we can get my people there on time.
African Time also shows typical American riffs between the children of African immigrants and their parents.
Oh, nothing. I'm just trying to clean my room. My mom was all, it is time to clean your room. Sounds just like my mom.
In a foreign country, there's always a conflict, between African parents and their kids, because they're Americans, whether we like it or not. They are born here, this is all they see, but in our mind, they're Africans. So, okay, stop!
Kelechi Eke works as a computer programmer in Dallas, though he hopes to one day make movies full-time. He says that's a big challenge for all independent filmmakers.
If you're starting off and looking at the money side of it, I will advise don't do it, because the returns are not immediate.
What keeps him going, he says, is all the positive feedback from people in the United States, Europe, and Africa. One of his films about Africans struggling with their identity in a foreign land is used in Africa Studies programs at several major U.S. universities. Kelechi Eke is now developing a site, bigobi.com, where people around the world can see his films streaming online. Greg Flakes, VOA News, Houston.
Well, sadly, it's time for us to go offline, but we hope to have you with us again next week when we're back with a brand new show.
But before we go, we want to send a shout out to viewers watching us on B92 TV in Belgrade, Serbia, and on MTV in Colombo, Sri Lanka.
And of course, all of you can watch On Assignment anytime, 24/7 via the Programs tab at voanews.com.
Not to mention Facebook and YouTube. Until next time, goodbye from Washington.